Memes vs. Machines Re-peleed is, or was at the time of this video, a long-awaited entry to a beloved series called Memes vs. Machines. These events hosted community missions that focus less on providing a standard and challenging Memes vs. Machines experience, but instead to humor the players with fun and wacky experiences for April Fools. Meme missions, as they are commonly called. Playing a meme mission is basically equivalent to going to a stand-up comedy routine, focusing on telling jokes through gameplay, as well as representing internet memes and culture around that time. But you may once in a while get a mission that toys around with the inner bounds of TF2, or offer a completely unconventional experience, whether that be referencing an entire game or offering a power fantasy experience. In the early days, these meme events were handled by Potato before later being handled by Moonlight, only for them to then retire the series in 2023 with Operation Last Laugh. Although these events were quite short, releasing once a year and lasting for 2 weeks at most, to a lot of players they were what they remember most fondly about community MVM. But now, memes is back! Re-peleed, 11 meme missions across 11 maps, and medals. Dude. Now this hard medal is my favorite out of the bunch. Finally, just in time for April Fool. May 4th. As someone who previously covered the meme operations a few months ago, I have been looking forward to this revival for the longest time. The cool and wacky things they had done over the past 5 entries have been tremendously spectacular, always improving upon what came before, and Memes Re-peleed was no exception.
I'm gonna die.
Hello again. No, I've never seen that one!
If you read this, you stinky! Okay, what the fuck is this sound? What if we all do it together?
Yeah, hold on. 3, 2, fuck. Sorry.
You failed your own countdown! You would...
Log 2.
Oh no!
This one. Oh.
You're wrong!
Okay, I got a sticky trap. Let him.
It was great experiencing meme missions in the big 2026. We've had some returning creators from the prior meme operations that were able to make some of the best meme missions made so far. From the memes, the jokes after jokes, and to just full-on references towards other games. There were also some of the more unconventional missions that were really impressive this year, landing somewhere between proof of concepts like a completely new boss rush style mission, and completely experimental like overhauling the upgrade menu into a roguelike progression system. And I desperately hope that we see a much more proper and refined iteration of both ends in the near future. But at the same time, I have to be honest here and say that while the highlights this year have soared through the roof, the lowlights have unfortunately never been as low as it was until now. To best summarize what I have to say about Memes Re-peleed overall, I enjoyed most of what this operation had, but deep down, I wish I loved it more. I understand that unreasonably high expectations were placed onto this entry. After all, it has been 3 years since the previous one, and the quality standard had been set so high by then, so it wasn't too surprising that this entry couldn't meet it. But there seem to have been a few decisions made along the way that has ultimately led to this event receiving more negative feedback than before. And I'm sure that we all know what the elephant in the room is. Come on, man, did we really miss April Fools? You know, the one tradition of memes versus machines that has remained for 5 entries until this one. I was desperately hoping that after they missed this date that they release on April 6th or 7th to capitalize on the 6-7 joke. But they didn't, and the beta was just stuck existing for the entire month of April. I know it isn't really that serious, and I'm sure something happened along the way that caused the event to delay this long. It's better late than never, but the series has always been known by its second name, April Fool's MVM. At the very least, they tried doing the whole horse joke in the blog post to explain the delay, but nevertheless, I did feel genuinely bummed out that an April Fool's operation didn't even release on April Fool's and instead launched on freaking Star Wars Day. Another reason why I felt the need to be so critical was the quality of the missions this time around. Part of this has to do with submissions being open to the public, just as how the first memes operation did it. This is something I can't forgive this event for, because the other operations besides the first one were handled by a private group of creators that knew how to handle the series. But there are certainly hints pointing towards a lack of quality control, issues that were very clearly problematic but was instead just left unaddressed and sank the reputation of some particular missions. But anyway, that's as far as I'll go regarding Memes Re-peleed as a whole. Beyond this point, I'll just be giving my thoughts on the 11 missions here in greater detail, both positive and critical. I understand that some of my opinions are gonna rub a few people the wrong way, but I just want you to know that this is all coming from someone who's already familiar with Memes vs. Machines, someone who was excited to see a once beloved series come back and enjoyed it, but was left feeling that things could have been done better. Running. Uh oh. Fuck! Shit. A Dark Zone is a nightmare endurance mission that's directly inspired from Deltarune Chapter 4. Here, the mission takes Jackenstein, one of the boss fights featured in that chapter, and translates it over to MVM gameplay. Now, before I say anything real quick, just want to say that I don't consider myself a Deltarune fan. I'm not familiar with the game or the fandom or any related memes at the time of the recording, so I am going to primarily base my opinions off of the experience on offer. But with all that being said though, this mission is pretty awesome. On its own, this is a very fun and standout mission. Navigate through a maze, kill something that holds a key, and bring it to the exit before Hadenstein kills you because... By the way, it's Hadenstein, not Jackenstein, just as a legal distinction. This mission is an all-class mission where everyone plays a scout, and you do have access to various custom weapons, those such as a scout shooting multiple flares, or super bees as it's so called. There's a pistol that shoots high gravity rockets, and another that shoots high inverted gravity lasers. The overclock upgrades were also interesting on this mission. These can significantly change an item in many different ways, stuff like the one for the soda popper where you can unload a burst of grenades when using the hype meter, the force of nature now being able to shoot explosive slugs without the annoying knockback on each shot. There was one called Spicy Milk that converts your mad milk into a fireball projectile, and there was one for the fan award that spouted a bunch of gibberish and nonsensical references each time you hit something. The only weapons I didn't find too particularly great were the backscatter and the babyface blaster. The former being that for whatever reason the full crit boost on back shots wasn't really working properly, and the latter just not being interesting compared to the others. But besides that, I really enjoy using the various custom weapons and overclocks, and it definitely kept each run fresh whenever I wanted to try new things as I replayed the mission over and over. Speaking of the mission, it is in fact pretty well made. The first half of the experience translates most of the jokes from the source material, if those such as a smaller pumpkin doing the "you are taking too long" but with a higher pitch. There's one maze where you kill a bunch of scout boss with a key before a whole bunch of pumpkins spawn in and all collectively say but the mission wasn't afraid to take its own liberties as well, what with the boss that you fight as well as a unique maze layouts, mixing up whatever it could for Villa by utilizing barriers in and out. This same creative freedom applies much more towards the second half. Plenty of the jokes later on are original, having the software lock 2, having some tea as you take a break, raking the leaf piles out in the front.
Raking?
You're raking. Rake the
We're doing this now.
The exit location constantly teleporting around as Hadenstein laughs at you with
Oh, up!
What?
Oh!
Bruh.
Yeah, it's a forceful lol.
oh! Charlie run!
Now, how am I supposed to jump up there, though?
Lol.
Yo.
What the fuck?
Oh!
The exit started moving.
As someone with no prior knowledge of Deltarune, I still find myself giggling at many of the jokes and gags the mission sets up. As far as I'm aware, there's not much to know other than the mission simply translating the boss fight over to MVM. The only other characters brought over were Tenna, which appears in one of the mazes as a chaser instead of Hadenstein, and this weird old turtle man you can hit to refund upgrades, who is apparently Garrison. These two are from the same game, but it didn't seem like I was missing too much, given that objectively speaking, one's a weird cameo and the other's a funny looking shopkeeper. There's also a secret fight against Garrison that I didn't even realize until later it was copied over, but even then, this was written as its own unique thing compared to the source material. It's hard for me to say that there was anything really wrong with the mission. I suppose one thing I would say is that it ironically takes too long to complete. The time it takes to complete the mission is somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes, and to be honest, yeah, it is kinda a bit long. Some of the maze layouts can be confusing to navigate through, and others that are more combat oriented can take a while to shoot through. Those such as Wave 6 where you gotta kill 2 giant demos to take the key and exit respectively. Wave 15 has 2 jokes in one relating to Uber, and while it is very funny, admittedly it does take quite a bit with the bumper car controls. But hey, at least the mission forces you off at a certain point. The Unleashed segments could also be done a bit better. These are the only opportunities where you can damage Hadenstein for a bit before the mission continues, but in here, he does move far too erratically during these segments. Supports here can also be a bit too lethal, especially with the trio banner soldiers and the shield medics that can show up. But overall though, I enjoyed this mission quite a lot. Even if the segments were showing a bit of repetitiveness, the humor does carry it quite a lot. And comparing this to the source material, it did a well enough job on translating the gameplay over while also expanding upon it. I don't have much to say regarding the final battle against Hadenstein, which is apparently this mission's unique thing, but it was pretty cool seeing them utilize the jokes from prior waves against you. I really love what this mission had, even if it was taking too long at certain points. A Dark Zone is gonna receive an A from me. Too Many Cooks is a mega collab mission in the sense that a large pool of creators have come together to make the mission. For those unaware, mega collab missions are made with more than 3 creators working on it, each wave done by 1 creator, though some will work on 1 additional wave. This type of mission first appeared with Peculiar Pandemonium, and the second being Last Laugh, the 2 meme events prior to memes repealed. And each one, I'd say, was the peak of their own respective events. The idea for this one is that now each subwave is made by 1 different creator, which theoretically sounds incredibly humorous if the previous mega collab missions are to go off of. Well, I have to say this is perhaps the most disappointing mega collab mission I've ever played. To put it as best as I could, I really don't understand how we have a mission that flip-flops between standard and memes and somehow doesn't show enough enthusiasm to deserve the title of a meme mission. Now it does start off with a good impression, weird robots like Hypermins and giant demos shooting out Girardi bombs, and then there's the start of wave 2 with a bunch of engineers zooming around, there's bumper car heavies, as well as a plethora of Trojers flying around, including a boss variant at the end. This is at the very least objectively humorous, but after all of this is where the mission starts falling apart. We now start having subwaves that don't really try at all to be memes. Stuff like crit boosted bowmen, giga black boxes that are apparently fake but still get a large majority of their health back, custom giant heavies that deal extraordinarily high amounts of damage, as well as all the other bots that have no humorous elements to be observed. And then there's one subwave where it's just conch soldiers with quick fixes. Of course the argument is simply the meme, too many cooks. Yes, the entire joke is about having too many cooks in the kitchen, so quality between subwaves are going to be jumping around a lot, as well as the constant difficulty spikes that award this mission the expert label. But at the same time, it comes to question whether these subwaves are appropriate for a meme mission. And so far, there is a bigger ratio of serious subwaves as opposed to the memey subwaves here, and these serious subwaves just take themselves too seriously. But I suppose the second half is a return to form. We see far more humorous subwaves like Wave 5 having short-sized shortstops and Kukri snipers, a mini-boss trio of whatever these 3 icons are supposed to represent. Wave 8 has this really weird giant medic duo pocketing each other, where the solution was to body block the non-Uber one and kill it, and then doing so causes the other one to get enraged and the map starts swarming with Uber-charged canteen scouts. There's also some of the other cooler subwaves like the titular major crits joke and a weird mafia subwave where you gotta kill a wealthy heavy bot. But overall, these subwaves are pretty appropriate for a memes mission, and my compliments to the chef that designed Wave 6. It is one single subwave where you fight Mercenary Matter with their unique mechanic where they take full damage respective of the type they currently deal. It wasn't a particularly challenging boss, but it was appropriately designed for memes, both in difficulty and in design. But as much as the second half redeems the mission as a whole, it still suffers from having serious subwaves that take themselves way too seriously. Going from having a cheery and joyful time and having a good laugh to just balls to the wall action and locking in at the last minute of every wave here is not at all what I expect out of a memes mission. Giant soldiers with giant Ubers pairing alongside tanks, which strangely happens 2 times on 2 separate waves, and the second occurrence is especially bad with its super scouts and crit boosted fury pyros. And then you just have a serious subwave to end out the whole experience. It is just a roided up Captain Punch that slowly walks through the bomb and has a much higher damage resistance, and the supports being giant soldiers that rapid fire and burst fire respectively. Compare this finale to every other mega collab mission in the past, and man, the difference here is just absolutely staggering. No drama, no theatrics, no excitement. There's just nothing here that makes me want to get off my seat and applaud this mission for what it has. There's a lack of quality control here, and it's been clearly shown in the most unironic sense. As cool as the potential was to having a meme mission made by too many mission makers to count, there really needed to be much more focus on having comedic and gimmicky subwaves. Some have definitely understood the assignment, but for others, I guess the idea of memes just completely flew over their heads. There's nothing wrong with making a meme subwave that doesn't stick the landing, but when the goal of a memes mission is to entertain the audience, the last thing you want to do is make a subwave that belongs in a standard expert mission. To put it best, I'm not mad with this year's mega collab mission, I'm just disappointed. Which is why I'm giving Too Many Cooks a C. Hexerfixation is a meme mission that replicates the old style of memes 1 and 2, those being the first memes vs machines event and match mediocrity. That means that the experience here is practically vanilla, with most of the meme elements coming from the robots and the icons that you shoot at, as well as music that plays throughout. Because of the fact that the mission mainly presents memes this way, it doesn't really offer a particularly interesting experience compared to the other meme missions here. Most of the references here are towards Overwatch, Celeste, Mario, Sonic, Toho, and Pokemon, and I'm sure many people will be delighted to shoot at their favorite characters from their beloved franchises, but how the mission utilizes them wouldn't be as interesting to someone who doesn't have the same media literacy. From an objective standpoint, the ways here mainly have you going through the motions, killing robots pretending to be characters from different games. It is quite repetitive here, especially with the first half. It's only until you get to waves 4 and 5 that the structures change up. The former is just a boss wave of fighting Pokemons, which strangely have the Razorback used to indicate backstab immunity, but it's as a cosmetic rather than an item. And all these Pokemons have the Razorback except for Hexmaniac at the end, which can just be backstabbed normally. And then there's wave 5 that mainly uses giant robots to deliver messages through the kill feed. You can definitely feel the weaknesses of the old meme style at this point, lots of waiting in between messages, grammatical mistakes, and punchlines that in my opinion aren't hitting as they should. Though the one part I did like was the song at the end.
Oh my, this fucking song. Oh, Jesus.
Besides all that, the final wave just has a boss fight against a charged soldier named Hexerfixation, alongside a whole bunch of Rosalinas and Hexmaniacs. The fight wasn't really anything worth writing home about, and their final message gets completely obfuscated by all the other text after completion. I can't respect this mission's effort in replicating the old style of memes versus machines, but it was up against a very stiff competition that makes this mission look worse in comparison. The memes and references were somewhat interesting, but more so what they were rather than how they were used or presented in the mission. Hexerfixation will get a C from me.
We did it!
Yeah, we did it!
We beat the single soldier robot! What?
Whoa.
Oh my goodness! The
Oh
torches!
my god.
Single Soldier Robot is a meme mission that's a return to form, but with the more recent events. This mission basically takes one idea, being the Single Soldier Robot, and tries to come up with a whole comedy routine centered around it. I quite enjoyed the jokes that were told here, though such as the whole 75 major crits wave being decimated by our friendly soldier and the mission being flabbergasted by the performance. There's a fight against an adept soldier robot that gets swarmed by bugs, and then fighting Marasmus for a bit before they take on our side. And then you get to this one wave where the monolithic soldier gets replaced with a heavy bot and starts having you go through several stages of shooting down heavies. The variety of jokes and gags presented here are pretty well done. A mix of goofiness alongside the intense and actiony parts, as well as throwing in curveballs of creepy and horror elements. It's a very weird dance along with the unhinged energy the mission has, and yet it all pays off really well.
What?
Oh my god.
That's 200 pounds off for a family.
What the fuck?
Okay.
Giant fuck?
The gameplay segments also stand out from one another. Aside from having a few waves playing out like a comedy routine, the mission also throws in a round-based wave, as well as a long battle to defeat the monolithic soldier robot. And the ending to this one was quite spectacular. A cutscene to the monolithic soldier exploding, its health bar sinking with the explosions, and of course the mission is still letting on that you aren't done yet. And then of course by the end of the mission, you fight the single soldier robot, only for them to do this.
Uh-oh.
Oh shit!
Uh-oh.
Run!
Uh-oh.
Enrique!
I lived!
I did find a few issues with some parts of the experience. The build up towards certain punchlines did certainly take a bit longer than necessary. Some of the ones that did stick out was with Marasmus on wave 3, where it does take a bit long for them to start targeting the adept soldier bot. There's also wave 6's long battle where everything stops for one segment, where a single soldier robot comes in with a large hubris and dies in one shot.
Oh, okay. Oh no, sounds so sad.
It was a decent joke all things considered, but it does drag on for a whole last minute. Besides that, the only other thing I'll complain about is with wave 5 just having too many white flashes throughout the whole ordeal. I've seen others criticizing this mission for being labeled as an expert, being way too easy to beat in reality, and some parts possibly being soloable. I see why, given that there's another mission with the expert label that actually follows through with it. But as someone who was already familiar with meme missions in the past, this wasn't really a concern. These missions are known for focusing on jokes and gags and to entertain the audience rather than challenge them. It would make the most sense that the label also gets the same treatment, so I had zero issues when my expectations were subverted. It's also why I think Single Soldier Robot is a great experience to enjoy. Its soldier bots will humor you, the jokes are unpredictably fun, and it is wonderful to see this kind of meme mission made after a 3-year hiatus. Single Soldier Robot will be receiving an A.
Oh. To get these. Okay, I got the ducks.
I'm gonna beat this tank's ass. Bump in the Night is a meme mission centralized around one mechanic. Here, everyone rides in bumper cars to run over various robots and giants. I do appreciate the effort put into trying to make all this work. You get custom upgrades for yourself, including max health increases and push force reduction to pair alongside the usual resistances. And you can also upgrade your bumper car to deal more damage on collision. There's also passive damage, which allows you to deal continuous damage when you get near the bots, and also stomp damage where you can deal a set amount of damage on landing. The mission also makes some accommodations for the map by adding ramps that previously wasn't there before, and there's a portal down the ditch in case you drop down. Gotta give credit where it's due. And then there's the gameplay of this mission, which is gonna be a hit or miss for a lot of people. I think everyone can agree on how bad the bumper cars are to control in this game. The steering is quite slow and the car is very slippery, and there is an input delay depending on your connection to the server. This wasn't necessarily something that completely broke the experience for me, but I know well enough that controlling bumper cars for the next 15 to 20 minutes or so is something not everyone's gonna like.
Is this really 5 waves of this?
Yes.
Oh no.
We're not going to vary it? We're not going to change up what we're doing?
Upgrade stations are open for business, okay?
If I can get to it.
Oh man, I fucking want to throw up. Clouds, how you holding up? You having fun?
Come on, it's not so bad.
I don't know. This feels like the end level of Simpsons Hit and Run, like it actually does, and it's hurting.
The waves in this mission are pretty serviceable for what it is. It's basically MVM gameplay except your only defense is vehicular manslaughter. The mission likes to make a couple of subtle changes to add humorous elements. Stuff like name changes and visual appearances comes to mind. You do fight some very interesting robot types, especially those in bumper cars, and my favorite ones here are the sentry busters that can roll up to try and explode near you. Besides the custom bots, the general experience felt a little lackluster. Most of the time you fight boss in the main drop down, and it does get a bit tedious ramming into the boss and then backing up to do it over again. I guess I can't be too upset with this gameplay loop, but it wasn't exactly impressing me either and just felt a little repetitive later on. At the very least, the mission does add some variation to the gameplay. The later waves can send out tanks which cannot be damaged by bumper cars, and the way to kill them is by collecting enough ducks around the map so that you can power up and deal massive crit damage with actual weapons. I think some of the golden ducks in certain spots can be ridiculous, but overall it's a decent change in gameplay. The map choice also wasn't really the best. It's basically a Halloween version of Decoy, and movement around this map is incredibly cramped, especially with the interiors. There's a lot of sharp turns you have to make, which doesn't really work well with the slow steering, and it makes some parts of the map ridiculous to navigate through. On the flip side, you don't have to spend a lot of time driving around to the next robot, so the gameplay still remains engaging. In that sense, I see it as a positive, but I still think the size of the map definitely needs to be more bumper car friendly. Undoubtedly, the best part of this mission is the boss fight at the end, and it's mainly for their entrance alone. Race hater. The boss also has a bunch of flashy moves, sending boulders around itself, sticky bombs everywhere, all the while having multiple support bots that show up. And the ending of this mission is pretty well executed, finishing him off and having him sent flying back and dying in a massive explosion. But at the same time, the boss fight definitely has its issues relating to gameplay. To damage the boss effectively, you have to collect ducks around the map, much like with the tanks, and you have to do this at a minimum of 3 times, which I didn't mind at all, but the buff duration is too short. It made sense for the tanks because they can get shredded in like 1 second, but the boss takes a while to whittle down, and they do become invulnerable at certain thresholds. The timer seems balanced for a scenario where all 6 players are all ready to shoot the boss, but that's just too ideal of a situation. With most teams, there wasn't enough damage pouring in to getting the boss's health down at a steady pace, so more than 3 times I had to go around and collect ducks over and over. Not to mention how specifically for this fight, the amount of ducks you need to collect is increased from 15 to 25, so it does get more repetitive the longer the boss fight goes. Overall, it's a pretty decent meme mission that's centralized around one gameplay mechanic, though the execution could have been a bit better, and I would have liked to see less tediousness and a better map choice. Bump in the Night will be receiving a B. Ooh, holy shit. Hunting season is a meme mission that's all about birds and shooting them. I do like what the mission has done with this idea. Plenty of the gags are laid within the robots that you fight, such as some of the eagle soldiers having conscientious objectors with eagle head pictures, the firehawk pyros that can cast fireballs with their hands, and the giant medics that can shoot doves as their crossbow bolts. Many of the name tags that come up in the kill feed are also quite on the nose, and some of them did get a good chuckle out of me. Obviously the mission uses all this as flavor added onto the experience, as for the most part the gameplay acts out like a standard mission, so a lot of these subtle subtle gags have to be actively seeked out. One of the more interesting aspects of this meme mission are its use of custom AI. There's a few scout bots that repeatedly jump mid-air and try to melee you as though they are actual birds. Then there's the more infamous ones being the Parrot Knights, where they are designated to trimp from the map's boulder out at the front, which is really impressive. And then there's the Sentry Busters that are able to do this too, which is quite an evil design choice, but I will admit that they are certainly clip farm material. Besides that, you don't really get much else that's front and center compared to the other meme missions, and I did notice a few other things that are lacking. There is a guy named Chuck that commentates on each wave, although to be honest, you really aren't missing much, and part of me wishes that they could be more involved in the mission rather than just being the exposition guy. The writing can also feel a little weak here, especially with wave 5 where you kill several boss birds back to back, each group having different messages, pleading for mercy, and yet still fighting back. Then there was the final wave referencing weaponry skins, which I didn't really understand too well until I realized the boss we were fighting was named Great Blue Eagle, so that was an interesting reference towards the TF2 community. On its own, they're just a boss that caps off the experience, so there's not much to complain about here. There's not really much more I can speak of regarding hunting season. It did its job well at being a bird-centric meme mission, but there's not enough moments to highlight here that would have otherwise placed this mission at a much higher tier, so hunting season will be placed in B tier. Something on the Air is a meme mission that delivers the jokes through subtle and obvious ways, but far too often is it relying on text and reading dialogue for the players. And in many ways, the memes and ideas that are presented here definitely works better in theory than in practice. Let's start with the narrator, who was the broadcaster. You load in and are instantly greeted with a wall of text, just to say that we gotta kill someone that's trying to hijack the memes event. Now having exposition isn't too bad to set things up, but the broadcaster is someone that narrates over the experience. And if I had to describe their personality, they aren't particularly likable. Their dialogue is pretty cut and dry, and they constantly give unsolicited advice in an irritating and boring manner. There's also poor balancing between the exposition and gameplay. You want to read what the dialogue is saying, but the gameplay is also wanting to keep your eyes forward, and these waves are moving fairly quickly, and the mission never gives you the time to sit back and read the scrolling text, so you're constantly darting your eyes back and forth on the screen, which is it's very headache inducing. And then there's the memes of this mission. Aside from the narrator, the mission borrows a few other elements from past meme operations. Wave 2 is a pretty big example of this, taking the Uno reverse card back in memes 1 and using it to reverse the names of every robot and reversing their stats as well. Then the other meme I really liked from this mission was the flying rainbow tanks, which is a very old reference to Nyan Cat. I would probably appreciate this much more if the broadcaster didn't point it out in such a condescending tone. But besides that, most of the other memes are quite niche, which, you know, I'm sure other people out there wouldn't recognize it. There are those like the viewers from Little Nightmares 2 that are randomly T-posing around the map as decoration. Misinformation from Plants vs Zombies 2 Flourish also appears in this mission near the end, as well as a fiery debate between a TF2 content creator and a workshopper. Yeah, this one is less niche. Anyway, the bigger issues point towards the gameplay and presentation of the mission. Pacing is really fast in all departments, the first wave just being varieties of robots spawning everywhere while some ear-grating music plays. The third wave, where it features the content creators butting heads, kept me in a dizzy. You're supposed to slow down the TF2 content creator from deploying the bomb, but then the audio that's playing is supposed to sync with the dialogue and text. But then some words are swapped out, so you have to also imagine the speakers saying these new words. I don't know how best to describe it, but it started becoming pure nonsense after the first 5 to 10 seconds.
But because of the free trade agreement, that's where we'll have to move the company if we want to go out of business. We just want a sensible discussion of the issue.
If the text wasn't annoying enough, there's also the fifth wave, which pretty much plays like a standard wave with meme bot templates, but the annotations constantly popping up during the wave made this experience unbearable. They cover most of the screen, they linger on for too long, and there's far too many of them. And admittedly, the last message is a little distasteful. Other than the issues with presenting memes, this mission does use the upper left path far too liberally. Far too often I had to deal with flankers including gate bots and those that can just take the bomb. The mission constantly sends a couple of robots down this way, and defending the left path is such an arduous task that it drives people away from sticking with it. And then there's a final wave, which is a perfect culmination of everything wrong with this mission. You're fighting robots like you always do, while at the same time misinformation has a cameo spreading some misinformation. Then they get to this part where they spam the entire chat with sponsors. And this was the part where I just had to tune out of the whole experience, because at this point the missions just started spewing out some random bullshit about Nightfall Nexus. A very niche reference that only the people of Potato really know about. There is a long piece of audio that's playing throughout this last segment, and yes, you have to once again reimagine the audio of it saying these things.
Matter of money and how the banks and politicians have been corrupted by the Illuminati in a totally different way to the way you imagine. Red alert, people! Banks aren't just about lending you money so you are a slave to the system. Shut the fuck up!
Overall, Something on the Air is a very fast-paced experience that misses the mark on a lot of areas. While I do like some of what it had, like referencing old media, the mission doesn't give you the time to appreciate what's going on. There's a lot of reading and a lot of telling that it can just feel like white noise with how everything proceeds. The general experience also takes itself more seriously than I would have liked, and most of the other memes shown here didn't particularly resonate with me at all. So I am gonna give Something on the Air a rating of D. Roguelike mod is less so a mission and more of an upgrade mod. It completely revamps the upgrade menu into a roguelike progression system. It was daunting at first now that you're forced to adapt instead of knowing exactly what you need, but that feeling does become fleeting when the world is now your oyster, and goddamn is it fun! To run down how things work here, the upgrades are split between 6 selections, randomized each time one is chosen. You get 6 tokens at the start of the mission, and winning each wave gives you 3 additional tokens. The greatest thing is that the upgrades are now tied to your character, and thus all 3 slots get the same benefit, and most upgrades in the game can be purchased if they come up. So if your RNG is good enough, you can get some seriously insane builds up and running. We're talking shredding giants and tanks in 2 to 5 seconds, and if anyone ever gets crit on kill, it is literally GG. And yes, there is the infamous bleed for 8 seconds upgrade, so you can play as an enforcer spy and start bleeding robots to death. This mission also comes with several new custom upgrades, most of them being class exclusive, like having more flame width and range on the pyro, extra sentry guns and boosted sentry range for the engineer, and converting bullets to explosive rounds on sniper. And there's other kinds of damage multipliers like damage while airborne, which is absolutely disgusting to stack with and trivialize the content. Speaking of content, this is gonna be where I have to start docking points. As I said before, Roguelikemod overhauls the upgrade menu, and that's all it really does. The playable content here is simply Bavarian Bot Bash from Operation 2 Cities, a Valve tour, and while it isn't completely unwelcome, I was disappointed that there wasn't any other community mission to try this on. I suppose having a unique mission design for it would be missing the point, since the whole purpose of Roguelikemod as a submission was to show off the new upgrade features in a familiar setting. Bavarian Bot Bash is one of the better Valve missions to play at the very least, but I still think that having 1 or 2 community missions repurposed for Roguelikemod would be serviceable. The only thing to really complain about when it comes to Bot Bash is the amount of crit bots seen throughout. Because resistance upgrades are tied behind RNG, you won't be able to build for it reliably, and even then you can only max it out at 60%. So in most of my playthroughs, I was just better off building as a glass cannon. After all, the best defense is a strong offense. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but the early game can be a struggle depending on RNG. There's also some of the more prominent issues regarding Roguelikemod. There's obviously the RNG issue, which is just a given with this type of system, but I do think that you can just become too powerful too early. You can just get the overpowered upgrades on wave 1 immediately and stop practically every single wave. I don't know if other roguelikes have this issue, so feel free to prove me wrong, but yeah. I will say that one thing I absolutely don't like is that you can only have 1 single reroll chance. I don't know why you can only do it once in the entire playthrough. There's 6 checkpoints throughout Bot Bash, and you get 3 tokens per wave completion. Getting 1 additional reroll in the same instance would certainly reduce the frustration with an RNG system like this. Also, because the new upgrade system relies on tokens, credits have largely become redundant. Right now, they're only used to buy back in, and only with a small amount of credits. You also can't refund with the roguelike system too, which I completely understand since the whole point is to commit to what you got, but it does suck when your team clearly struggles and there's no way to optimize for a better build, so I think having refunds come at a very expensive cost would also help too. But despite its flaws, I still had a good time with Roguelikemod. Even though RNG can be a bitch sometimes and the mission choice could have been better, I was satisfied with what Roguelikemod currently offers. I am looking forward to a better, more iterated version of this, and perhaps I could look into experimenting with it on other missions as well. Roguelikemod will be receiving a B. Deja Vu Deja Mort has gotta be one of the most impressive experiences I've had in memes re-peleed. This unconventional mission was designed with a boss rush structure. About 60 bosses and mini-bosses are featured across several map arenas, each fought in their respective waves and gauntlets. I was quite ecstatic that we're now living in the age where something like this is a real and legitimate thing. A lot of custom MVM bosses as of late have underwent a technological leap, where they are now designed to not only utilize a unique arsenal of weapons, but is also capable of performing some ability-based attacks. These are all done via taunt animations that are repurposed for such scenarios, whether that be unleashing projectiles, casting a damaging area of effects, or a completely unique sequence. The potential is quite limitless, especially with the tools we have now, and it's been wonderfully displayed in Deja Vu Deja Mort. There are some absolute standouts like Soviet Tonka weapons, a heavy bot that's packed with custom animations to not only perform unique melee attacks, but also to have an insanely badass intro sequence. There's Iron Star Genius, an engineer boss that initially starts attacking in a UFO that's armed with laser cannons before fighting you themselves. Coupled with the green color correction and overlooming mothership that was added onto the fight, it makes for an amazing stage. There was also a unique encounter where you fought against 3 Toujou bosses, each having their own moves and unique attacks. And how can I not talk about Fallen Shocks? The final boss of this mission that's complete with its own unique arena and has multiple abilities with unique custom animations, the most insane one being their Mega Laser that has recoil being so high that it makes it move backwards. If you'd like to know more about my thoughts on these bosses as well as all the others featured in Deja Vu Deja Mort, you can check out my most recent video where I ranked them all in a tier list. But moving on from that, I wholeheartedly respect the amount of work put into trying to make all this shit work, especially on this scale. From what I understand, the gameplay takes a page out of the true arena from the Kirby games. Each and every boss is fought in one arena every wave, and each arena is wonderfully recreated from whatever map they are originally based off of. It's impressive how they managed to cram as many arenas as they could within one single map, all the while keeping the smaller details that make each one stand out. But as much as I can glaze about community MVM bosses in the modern era and how awesome this whole map is, I have to say that there was a lot of missed potential and issues with the gameplay that Deja Vu Deja Mort has currently. The number one issue is that it simply takes too long to complete. This mission has 19 waves, which is an absolute shit ton compared to every official community mission. I understand why, because once again the true arena had the same idea, but in practice that only really works in a single player setting where you're free to jump back in whenever. When it comes to MVM, it consequently leads to a lot of downtime because you gotta wait for the last person to F4, which most people including myself conveniently forget. I understand that it is an unavoidable problem, but surely there would have been some way to reduce the ready up time, like 30 seconds instead of 150 seconds minimum, because all that time waiting really does add up to the overall experience. Then there were some other boss fights that take much longer to get through, especially towards the second half, with most of it having main boss fights. Although to be honest, I'm pretty sure the issue mainly comes back to how many waves there are in this mission. In my own personal experience, the mission still felt engaging enough to where I wasn't really feeling the drag, but it is a real issue nonetheless. When it comes to the gameplay, it can be a little lacking. Most boss fights are rather easy. They don't really do a whole lot to counter meta strategies like the spy and meta combo or stacking classes like heavy or pyro. The only times you fail a wave is when everybody is dead, but there's no limited life system and the respawn times are practically instant, so this rarely ever happens. In all fairness, this mission was intended for a meme submission, so they clearly knew that by reducing the difficulty, they could try to appeal to as many people as they could, and it certainly worked in their favor if mission stats are to go by. You can definitely ride the highs of this mission if you're just winging it, but if you know how to min-max and find the most dominant strategy, then yeah, it does lose its luster a little bit. Now, if we're talking repetitiveness and dullness, then yeah, there's definitely some of it here. I think the first half definitely suffers the most from this fact. Most bosses here simply have weapons to swap in and out, and are fairly average fights overall. There's not too many of them that are entirely gimmick based or have distinct mechanics to their attacks, so most encounters typically play out the same way. I think in terms of a boss rush, it's kind of inevitable for things to be this way, just to have the second half be more substantial. But still, I do think a large roster of bosses in the first half do certainly blend together in terms of the strategy needed to beat them. And while we're on the topic of bosses, I felt a little disappointed that there weren't enough meme bosses to fight. We did get drunken drivers that run people over with bumper cars that make for a very interesting gimmick fight. There's a skeleton riding a motorcycle that constantly plays the bad to the bone riff, and I suppose you could count big-headed behemoth and mercenary matter as well, but aside from them, that's really it. Most of the other bosses are pretty serious or don't have the same level of wackiness one would expect from memes events. It's no secret that a majority of bosses here were reused, and from what I understand, they simply asked mission makers around to contribute whatever they could. That's all well and good, but it is still quite unfortunate that we couldn't see any of the bosses from the past meme events. Fandub Eggman from These Nuts would have been cool to fight early on, Vortex Troll would probably make for a cool mid-game boss if they were balanced to be beatable, and even Virgil from Devil May Cry 5 that actually appear in Revengeance status. This guy would have been perfect to just appear at the last part of the boss rush as a funny oh shit moment for the players. Still though, even with their absence, I was still satisfied with the boss rush at the end of the day. I suppose I'll mention some of the other things that bugged me. There were a few waves that randomly selected which bosses or gauntlets you fought for that specific wave. I didn't have too many issues with this besides it being annoying to record for the boss tier list video, but there was certainly a bit of disparity between the selections. Wave 6 and 13 were affected the most with this, the former for having too many bosses to roll for, and Wave 13 for mixing both bosses and gauntlets together, which ultimately led to an inconsistent experience between playthroughs. The supports across all waves are also a bit much. There's nothing wrong with having them, especially for health on kill, but they do certainly spawn too frequently. Some of the ones that stick out are the crit boosted Bat Scouts, the mini punches and Caber demos from Wave 14, as well as the armored versions of Bat Scouts. Having too many of these supports can certainly take the spotlight away from the bosses and can add quite a bit of unnecessary tedium. But overall though, Deja Vu Deja Mort still remains as one of the top missions I've had the pleasure of experiencing this event. It's a new format that I haven't had before in Community MVM and didn't realize how much potential there really was for this sort of thing. But it is not without its flaws. It's a very long time commitment for a huge payoff, and it is held back by some of its repetitiveness and tedium with many of the bosses that you fight. But with that being said, this mission is still pretty fucking cool. I can only hope the next iteration will be a lot more polished, with a much more diverse selection of bosses with even more gimmicks and unique mechanics to play against. Deja Vu Deja Mort will be receiving an A from me. Oh, wow.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness, it's moving.
shit.
Oh god. Nice.
Get him out of this corner.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anime fan.
Anyway,
Oh.
Whoa!
Oh.
Yes! Yes!
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Agnosiachromatopsia has gotta be the best overall meme mission I played this event. All the strengths of what makes a meme mission tick are here. Amazing technical feats, unique gameplay elements, and most importantly, the memes. The creators made an absolutely phenomenal transformation of Manworks, retexturing the landscape into black and white, and plastering the entire map with uncanny cat cubes, lightbulb cats, as well as goo cubes that one of the creators seems to be so obsessed with. The moment the first wave unlocks the spawn room with this creates a very strong impression with music that's appropriate for a strange yet intriguing experience. Then of course, as with meme missions, it betrays those expectations and starts getting crazier and wackier with how things proceed. The first half of the mission blends memes and the MVM gameplay together, and it does a pretty good job in the visual department. Lots of cats to go around, especially with the second wave having a whole bunch of uncanny cat neck spots. Then it gets to this third wave with a whole bunch of alien bots, and you gotta collect scrap and build an anti-alien alarm to beat this wave. By the way, this completely blew my mind as I first saw this. Seeing these cats and props animated in real time as the camera tracks their movement, which, oh, it's just so beautiful. Wow.
This is really high. This is
So
Wow.
high effort.
Wow. Waves 4 and 5 are definitely among the bigger highlights of this mission. The gameplay here has been transformed into references to other media. Wave 4 being a golfing minigame where you have to hit 4 candy cats into the goal, a reference to Uncanny Cat Golf, and Wave 5 being an entire WarioWare segment. There's plenty of micro games here, like slapping ass on these twerking demos, running over to a bathtub with a giant soggy cat, as well as Nickey jumping to avoid getting crushed. I mean, damn, it's pretty incredible how they managed to implement all these into the mission. I think some of the other micro games were a bit of a miss. It's mainly those that have to do with jumping, like the jump rope and the spinner. These have the blade moving too quickly, even at base speed, and it often results in first time players dying instantly. Then there's also Capture the Flag, which has a problem of having a death pit just a few inches away from the starting platform, and it often results in many people such as I dying within a millisecond. And then there are the 3 possible boss micro games towards the end. The war terminals from Pizza Tower was definitely the most fun, having to search and destroy them to extend a death timer. The other 2 are kind of the same idea but executed differently, basically having to hide away from invincible boss for a set duration. The first being just a black square named God who chases after you. This one does have a nice payoff since it plays a whole God is Coming track from Squirrel Stapler, which is terrifying to listen to. And then there's the other hide and seek segment where you get a cameo from the time constrained soul but as a fragment. It was cool at first seeing it able to time stop and unleash a rocket barrage that is near unavoidable, but as time goes on it does get a bit stale if you hide really well. I still enjoyed the tension they brought, but I think it could have been increased a bit if they were speed boosted or have them stop glowing once it gets to the last third of the segment. But overall though, the warrior wear segment was an absolute blast to play through, even if I did find some issues after replaying it multiple times. However, it is sad to say that wave 6 is the most controversial wave of the whole mission. It's basically a wave that references the whole 6-7 and funk memes, and then there's tongues of her here as well. I can't believe I have to say these things, holy shit. What upsetted the most for a lot of people was this wave's entire gimmick. Here, every kill forces time to stop, puts a randomized selection of images at the bottom of the screen, and plays a bit of funk music before resuming the gameplay. And when I say every kill, I mean every kill.
So this is brain damage. Yeah, so this is brain damage. This is what this is right here. This is
What are these fucking images? Oh my god. They clearly try to go for a so bad that it's good angle with this, which is quite a very bold move to take after what has happened with the mission so far. In my own personal experience, it didn't reach to the point where I was unironically hating it. I still had enough patience to pull through, and even on subsequent playthroughs, it still manages to get a good chuckle out of me. But the criticisms are very much warranted. I think having a trigger on every single kill was definitely overdoing it, and it probably would have been best to reduce it to a lower but still very high chance to proc it. This wave also ends with a weird sleep funk short clip.
Man, I'm so tired I couldn't sleep for days. Don't worry, Twin, I got you. Tap into that new sleep funk. Are you fucking stupid? How is funk gonna make me...
And then it has this sleep funk enthusiast heavy slapping people around and the team is completely defenseless. The first time I played this, they were targeting each and every one of us, but over the course of the event, it seemed to be changed to where they were dead set on targeting one specific player. I'm not really sure what caused this to happen, and it's still pretty funny to see, but I did miss how other people can also be on the receiving end. There's not much I can really speak on the final wave. It's just a boss fight against a scout bot with a black eye PNG for a head. They do cap off the experience quite nicely, not only with their entrance, but also using weapons that were previously seen from the other boss in this mission. And it has this funny fake out ending to a blue screen with a little ARG hidden by a QR code that is apparently the next upcoming project from these creators. Even though this mission has one single wave that could miss the mark for many people, the rest of the experience is quite exceptional. It has a very intriguing start to a wacky and masterfully crafted memes experience, and many of its technical feats are very well done, making for some funny and standout scenes while also crafting some unique gameplay segments that have never been seen before. This is by far the biggest highlight of this whole operation, and my personal top recommendation should you ever decide to play this one day. Agnosiachromatopsia deserves an S rating for me. Total Chaos is by far the biggest example of an acquired taste in this meme operation, because in all honesty, you really do either love or hate what this mission has going on. While there are some things to praise this experience for, I didn't really enjoy a majority of the general gameplay as much as I would have liked. I'll start with the positives before I start breaking the mission apart piece by piece. I do admire the work put into the weapon balancing, which was significantly revamped all thanks to the custom MVM project called Chaos MVM. Most of them range from massive stat increases to complete overhauls that can completely change your playstyle. Some of the highlights are the candy cane that allows scouts to hover around and shoot down at the bots, the warrior spirit allowing you to leap into the air and Goomba stomp them, the southern hospitality replaces your sentry with one that shoots out flames, and the big earner is an absolute Frankenstein where the spy can attack really fast and get a tremendous health boost on top of it. If you do go out of your way to try as many weapons as you could, you might possibly find some very interesting stuff to mess around with. And honestly, it is one thing that Chaos MVM gets right. Then another aspect of this experience was the increased player count up to 8. This is the only community MVM mission that has ever done this so far, and I'm kind of a sucker for a large-scale PvE experience. It is honestly pretty cool to tackle MVM missions that are made for higher player counts. But then it comes to gameplay of this experience, and this is where my overall impression of the modded project starts wavering. As you can clearly see with what's happening on the screen, the experience is a sort of power fantasy, and we'll get into the mission itself later, but damage numbers are excessively high, while at the same time the health of every robot is increased, and both you and the robots can deal boatloads of damage to one another, which still creates this balanced experience. With all this in mind, I came to notice more issues with the weapon roster as more time was spent replaying this experience over and over. Even though I can commend the mod for its diverse and cool weapon changes, there's definitely an issue with viability and power. The gimmicky weapons were certainly interesting to utilize, but far too often the gameplay of the experience takes itself too seriously, what with the robots actually killing you or just being too tanky for their own good. So in multiple playthroughs, I found myself gravitating towards either the simple but effective weapon weapons, the high power but slow firing weapons, or just the absolutely overpowered options. And then there's the melees in this mod, which is really convoluted. They have their own functions and purposes, but in practice they essentially function as stat sticks. Random changes to your speed, jump height, health, and resistances, and it's extremely confusing how much effective health you were gaining or losing. From my own experience, the Bat in Hell was completely overpowered for gun-based loadouts. It puts you at the standard base health, but holding it out increases your max health up to 30k health, which is a crazy shit ton compared to the other options. Switching out the Bat in Hell then converts the health into overheal that decays at an extremely low rate, and with it, you can live for a very long time with the health that you can get, and you can tank as much damage as you can, because apparently holding this thing out gives you full damage immunity. I mean, Jesus, that's quite the imbalance there. Yes, you take increased knockback with this thing, but it sure beats respawning over and over again like with the other melees. One other thing I was disappointed with was the fact that in place of its redesigned weapons, there's absolutely no way to upgrade weapons or items at all, which does upset me quite a bit that such a core aspect of MVM is now gone. Instead, you're just stuck at the same power level up until the very end. It would have been interesting to see how these revamped weapons would become stronger over time. Maybe tack on some unique and powerful custom upgrades that would boost otherwise weaker weapons. I think that would have been a better way of tackling the power fantasy angle, because right now, it does get very boring using the same weapons over and over, and constantly trying out new stuff was the only way I could find enjoyment with the experience. The reason why I need to talk so much about the weapons here is that they are bundled alongside the mission. All this context is needed so that you can understand how Total Chaos was made for Chaos MVM's balancing, and unfortunately most of what I have to say is going to be critical, so here goes. The best way I can describe Total Chaos is that behind the curtain of inflated damage numbers and the chaos, what have you, lies an absolute slog of an experience. There are very obviously custom bots here that are a core part of the Chaos MVM experience. To put it short, a fair majority of them are stronger and tougher variants compared to one another, like Chaos, Elites, Kaizos, and solid variants. However, there are also a few other types that inflict some annoying ass debuffs. These include the lime green curse robots that stuns anybody that's caught midair, and there are the purple shadow robots that can mark for death and bleed. This is a truly annoying combo because the bleed duration lasts for a very long time, and mark for death is being applied every tick, so you're just constantly listening to the sound. It's just awful. There's not really any sort of special robot to speak of, so all of the variants are just tiers of whatever class of robot you'll be fighting against, which overall leads to the experience feeling like everything's blending together. The waves here don't exactly feel great to play through. They start off way too easy where you're just spawn camping, and then it spikes up immensely later once the stronger variants show up and start spawning in other locations. These subwaves, if you let them, can be incredibly spammy, which I can't be too upset about because that's just how the mission has designed them with Chaos MVM in mind, but I will say that the ending subways rely too much on ending out with giant Ubers pocketing mini bosses. There are also extended versions too, running somewhere under 16 seconds, and with how high the threshold is to popping them, you're pretty much guaranteed to sit there and wait. It's not really particularly fun with these engagements. The map is also a huge factor in how the gameplay becomes unremarkable. This map called Titan is extremely ginormous, with a linear yet incredibly spacious layout that takes forever to walk around in unless you have movement options. The map at the very least gives you one teleporter from spawn to the front, but that's it. The middle of the map is a nightmarish labyrinth, which is a problem for waves that feature giant teleporter engineers in elevated areas. With how long this map is, some of the waves can possibly drag up to around 8 to 10 minutes, which is just absolutely time wasting. There's also the tanks in the early game, which are incredibly healthy blue rectangles. They're a surprise to no one and are just whatever at this point, but I would really appreciate if the map was more generous with ammo pickups, because there's far too many small ammo pickups around and too much space in between the pickup locations. It definitely would make tank busting less of a hassle, especially with how overscaled the map is. We have to talk about Wave 3, by far the most controversial part of this mission, and for pretty good reason. It's an escort segment where you have to protect 3 tanks one at a time, and the wave ramps up in difficulty up to the 3rd tank. This is pretty much a survival slash aggro check that doesn't happen until the very end. The last third of it sends a ridiculous amount of robots including chaos soldiers dealing lethal amounts of damage, and if anyone dies here or just isn't around to defend the last tank, it is quite literally GG in 5 seconds. And this entire wave takes about 7.5 minutes, so you could just waste so much time trying to beat this with a struggling team. I don't understand this wave structure either. The first third of it is just a complete joke. There's barely any robots spawning in, and it's extremely easy to spawn camp them, and you just spent 2 minutes just for this first tank. You may as well cut this tank out and just jump straight into the second one where stuff is actually happening. This wave also opens up spawn points from the farthest sides of the map, and only for this wave alone, I think. This is rather detrimental to the experience because the entire fight takes place at the front. All this really does is just have the robots randomly have a chance to flank around and shoot down the tank, and it's just extremely inconvenient to run back and kill the one bot that just so happens to be there. Once again, another frustrating aspect that shouldn't be here. Then Wave 5 has this one part where you just shoot at a big ass tank for 2 to 3 minutes. Now I will give Total Chaos this, the payoff here was actually quite good. It was cool to see this tank cut straight through the middle of the map with the accompanying debris and smoke covering it, and then having the Mega Laser at home base shooting it down before it gets any further. It is pretty awesome to witness from afar, and it does get a good reaction out of the people I've played with. Admittedly, on repeat playthroughs you can see the trickery behind it, you just need to damage it enough for the Mega Laser to successfully one-shot it, which is somewhere around a quarter of its max health, and at this point you can basically AFK and wait for it to die. But still, novelty alone, this is the best part of the mission. And then we get to Wave 6 being a boss fight, which unfortunately isn't great. Now I have no idea why the mission decided to do this, but there is a portal that opens up at the start, and rather than just pushing the players back when doing so, it just straight up kills anybody whenever they're close to it. I'm sure it's funny for some people, but for me, the mission has never went out of its way to have humorous elements and has been taking itself seriously the entire way through, so it just feels like a spit in the face for those affected. Anyway, this final wave is a boss fight against one of the creators. I'm serious, they're named Shadowboats and they bear the same name and icon as one of the creators of this mission. I'm not here to throw shade, I just thought it's funny that they decided to do this. For what the fight is, it's basically a Titan version of Sergeant Crit's fought in an overscaled arena. The supports here though are incredibly obnoxious and will deal sheer amounts of knockback, especially with the 2 hyperspeed Demo Knights that are completely invincible. With all this, the fight becomes incredibly tedious and can take a pretty long while when the team spends too much time focusing on the supports, which there is a constant amount of. The ammo and health pickups are also just as bad as the rest of the map. There's only 2 of each on the 4 sides of the arena, and only 1 pickup exists on whichever side. I really don't know why there couldn't be more than just 2 of each. Why not have an equal amount of both on each side? Anyway, all I can say about Total Chaos at this point is that it is an incredibly polarizing experience, and I couldn't get much enjoyment out of it as much as I would have liked. I'll admit, I can appreciate the effort in what it was trying to show off. They redesigned every existing weapon to be completely different, and came up with some very interesting stats and gimmicks for them that were fun to mess around with. Clearly there was a lot of time spent redesigning the core experience of MVM, and that's commendable. But all that talks mainly about Chaos MVM. If I were to speak about Total Chaos as a mission, then it is not at all spectacular. There were a lot of issues in regards to the gameplay. Oftentimes it felt completely mindless shooting at things, large in part owing to the overstimulating experience brought by Chaos MVM. And there were a few design decisions made along the way, of which were made to its detriment and drags the experience down as a whole. I understand that I only had a fraction of the experience Chaos MVM offers. Total Chaos definitely wasn't the only mission made for it, and I'm sure there are others out there, but I just wish that they had chosen a better candidate to represent this mod in a brighter light. Since my ratings are heavily weighted towards mission design, Total Chaos will be receiving a rating of D. So, has Memes vs. Machines Re-peleed lived up to the hype? For one, I am glad to see a return to the series. It's an opportunity for community MVM creators to step out of their comfort zone and create some truly insane experiences. From the wacky and humorous memes to the downright interesting and experimental, Memes vs. Machines remains as a yearly magical comedy show that was always worth checking out when given the chance. And yet, it boggles my mind that its return after a 3-year hiatus could have received a much more warmer welcome. A lot was left behind to make this happen. Public submissions instead of private this time around, lower quality standards than ever before, and worst of all, not releasing on April Fools. All 3 shots to the foot. It's no secret that Memes has always been held up to a high pedestal, each creator needing to give their all to make each and every experience count. And so to see the bad nearly outweighing the good within a tightly knit lineup of missions was quite shocking for the series, especially as a fan. But regardless, I still found enjoyment in Memes Re-peleed. No doubt carried by some of the old guard that had returned, but I can still recall the good from the other mission creators as well. And hey, if you had a way more positive experience with the other parts of the event, then more power to you. The question now is whether or not Potato will want to continue the series and rectify their mistakes for next year. Only time will tell. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far into the video and want to see more, like and subscribe, it helps a lot. And feel free to comment down below what you thought about Memes Re-peleed, and I'll see you on the next one.